Hello, Pod Smashers of the Internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-bit Pod Smash.
We are a weekly video game podcast smashing together ideas that you care about with video games.
That's right, and we are where gaming goes to grab a beer. It's overflowing again.
Oh, no.
Oh, at least this time I didn't open it over the wood. It's fine. It's fine. Everything's
Did it
fine.
get
I'm
on
just
any
a little
computer
wet.
equipment?
Oh, no. We're good.
Oh,
We're
good.
I opened it specifically not over. I just got myself covered in beer, so I'm going to be a little boozy tonight. We're your hosts, Penguin and Termite. I am Penguin.
I am Termite. This entire intro is woohoo!
Woo! I was trying to do the Horizon Zero Dawn. I was like,
Right.
What's the Horizon Zero Dawn theme song? But it's fine. So tonight we are smashing together, as you may have guessed, the Guerrilla Games. We're doing a dev profile on them in celebration of Horizon Forbidden West, which is not coming out this week, but is coming out next week. Next week just also happens to be the week of Thanksgiving. And it would have put us doing two developer Goodness gracious. What is going on? Do you want to start over? I feel like we should start over.
I mean, 229 episodes in, this is pretty great content.
Great. All right, yeah, 220 episodes in, we can afford to be a little shambly. Next week is Valentine's Day, so we have a special Valentine's Day episode planned, and we also didn't want to be stuck doing two developer profiles in a row. And the week after that, we'll be doing From Software in honor of Elden Ring, so we kind of decided to split them up. So in 2 weeks, sometime next week, Horizon Forbidden West will be coming out, so we're celebrating that by giving you the background on the developer, Guerrilla Games, and so that's why we're here tonight. Can we take a brief pause that we will cut out so that I can go wash my hands and pour this beer and just kind of generally clean up after this mess? All right, thank you.
Go ahead. Yep.
Because that is what you get when you leave a crowler sitting in your fridge for 2 weeks. You get a big
blows
mess.
up, apparently.
So yes, we'll be talking about Guerrilla Games. The song that I was trying to do was ooh. So, I think I bombed all of it, but it's cool. We're off to a good
I'm glad
start.
you have a song. Like, if someone were to just be like, Danny, what's the song from Horizon? And I'd be like, I have no clue. I would do Halo, I guess, because I had nothing else. Like, yeah. So good
do
for
Metroid.
you.
Do Metroid right now. 5 seconds. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yeah, you can't do it. Wow, you really can't.
Yeah, it's bad.
Beer. Where gaming goes to grab a beer. So we like to start off talking about what we're drinking tonight. And since this episode has completely gone off the rails and it's all like 85% my fault, why don't you go ahead and start?
I finished tonight. I have the last in my glass bit of Basil Hayden. Why does that sound like it's not a real thing? Basil Hayden bourbon, right? Yeah, I said it right. For some reason, I want to say Hazel Baden, and that's not correct. So we really are on like the same energy wavelength here with botching things. Basil Hayden. It was a gift from friend of the show, Gordon, who also does. What is the name of his podcast?
This is gonna hurt.
This is gonna hurt podcast. Go check it out. It is a very good podcast, and I've guested on it before. He has been a guest. Well, I've guested on his show twice, but friend of our show, dear friend of ours from Fredericksburg, he bought me a bottle of Basil Hayden to celebrate our move, selling of the house to Charlottesville, and that was back before Thanksgiving, and I'm just now finishing it up. So it's lasted quite a while. So I am drinking bourbon. This is just a very 80 proof, like smooth, kind of brown, sugary taste to it. It's an easy drinker.
Last week that it was the first beer that you'd had in a while.
Yep.
I only know this because I started editing
today. Yeah.
And so now you're back to bourbon. I'm just assuming you're low key, like cutting carbs out or cutting beer out for a little bit. I mean, not entirely carbs out, but like cutting down on carbs. Is that what I understand? You didn't make a big deal about it.
I didn't.
Okay.
I've had one beer since December 28th, and my alcohol consumption has gotten off the rails. The combination of the pandemic and being used to everything being a weekend night, and then the move and the stress, and then trying to get settled through the holidays, and then the snowstorms. I mean, luckily, like the holidays ended December 28th is when I stopped. Like, I have to put the brakes on. I was drinking more than one drink every single night, 7 days a week.
Wow.
And I wasn't drunk. I wasn't hungover.
No.
None of that. But I was getting out of hand. It was wine with my wife, like nightly.
Listen, if it ever becomes a problem, we can change it to where gaming goes to grab a tea. pretty
No,
easily,
not at all.
I think.
So I easily cut back now.
Right,
so
great.
I
Awesome,
drink
great.
I took a 2-week hiatus entirely, and then now I've been drinking like no weeknights is my rule.
In general,
except for
guys,
the night
if
we
you
record.
can stop the thing without much like effort or psychological like dependency, then you're probably not addicted to the thing. So that's good.
Right.
So I'm proud of
Yeah,
you.
it was extremely easy. But I'm also
Mhm.
trying to lose weight too. So like I replaced my meals with a shake that is like full of this crazy nutrition. I found out through a coworker. It's like you mix water with it, shake it up in a bottle. It's less than 300 calories and it's a meal replacement. So I've been drinking those for lunch, and I'm trying to like cut it since you've asked and open the floodgates. That's been going on since December 28th. And so like just in general, I'm trying to get my diet life back on the rails because everything else is completely fallen apart.
That's good, but I'm a little concerned about the shake thing is the only thing that concerns me. Like, eat some freaking food every once in a while.
I can give you the nutritional profile of the shake.
No. I don't.
Not malnourished.
No, it's still a shake. It's still like, unless you're in like a bunker for like 3 years, you should always take advantage of the fact that you live in a world in which we can grow food and eat it.
Yeah, it's like a jump start. It's just like to get the intentional eating habits back into my head, because now I'm like thinking about what I'm eating as opposed to just grazing all day long and grabbing something from the counter or grabbing something from the cabinet. Where now it's like I spent money; these aren't cheap on this lunch shake. So like now I really need to make the rest of the day look really good. So I have a smoothie for breakfast, which is liquid, of course, and then lunch shakes, and then whatever my wife makes for dinner. She does meal planning. I don't make a big fuss. That's why I'm not cutting carbs. I'm not cutting fat. I'm not going keto. I'm not doing anything else. Like none of that crap.
I was gonna say, when I was on keto, I was like talked about it on the podcast for like ever. So yeah, you really didn't make a big deal about it. You're just like, I'm cutting out beer last week, and then now you're back to bourbon, and I only put 2 and 2 together, and therefore brought it up.
You did.
Before I talk about what beer no, I'm not very well. I guess I am pretty intuitive. I like to say I'm not very observant, though. It just happened to be that was a detail.
You're not observant at all.
No, I'm intuitive, but I'm also ADHD. So it's like when I do pick up on details, my intuition usually kicks in a pretty big way. But generally, I'm just like la-di-da-di-da-di-da, doing my own thing. I want to circle back before I talk about my own beer choices for the night. I want to circle back real quick to the comment you made about being on Gordon's podcast. This is gonna hurt.
Yeah.
I have not been invited on This Is Gonna Hurt, and I can only assume that that's because this is gonna hurt too much if I get on the show. So I'm assuming
nailed it.
I've been invited. There's This Is Gonna Hurt, and This Is Going to Be Agony. And it would be more of the latter if I was on that. So welcome to our show. I am drinking the other crowler full of beer that was gifted to me by my friends at the Elkton Brewing Company, made lovingly by their own hands. And it's one of their Christmas beers. This was on the other end of the spectrum from the one I drank last week. Last week I drank like a Christmas blonde ale that was very like cranberry notes, and so kind of fruity and light and with that kind of Belgian wheat flavor. This one is a darker porter. It's called Belschnickeling, named after, of course, the German trickster Santa, Belschnickel, who comes down your chimney and beats you with reeds. He's very similar to Krampus, just a different name.
Mm-hmm.
And pretty much the same legend, basically. So Belschnickeling is the name of the porter that I'm drinking. It is very good. It is not. I like what they did with the polar bear a little bit better because it was so unique. This is a good porter though. Like, this is solid. So if you're like, hey, can they do the like staples of beer well? Yes, this porter is a staple porter. I would argue it's closer to a stout personally. My only criticism is that I wish it was a bit more boozy, because it's only like 5% alcohol, and I'm like, oh, I want this as like, I want Belschnickeling 2 Imperial Boogaloo next year, guys. So if you're listening to the show, that's my recommendation. And I still think they should name a beer after me, because they have this whole local legends line where they like pick like legends in the area, like literal people who did something legendary, or legends in that Elkton, Harrisonburg, Shenandoah Valley area, and they name a beer after them. I was like, all those guys knew me, and I think they loved me, and they know of my Penguin Man persona, and they helped spread the legend of Penguin Man themselves. So I took my friend aside when I was there. I said, I'm just going to run something by you, all right? White Russian inspired milk stout. Call it Justice is Black and White. And there is your Penguin Man legendary beer. Free idea for you guys.
Yeah.
So
Look at
that's
that. And this is called Belschnickling.
Belschnickling. Bell Snickle. SN. Hold on, let me see.
I've got it in front of me on their website.
Belschnickling. Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
Oh,
I want to make sure I got the right one because they're calling it a stout.
On
their website.
Okay.
I don't know why you thought it was a porter.
No, you're right. It's thick. It is thick like a stout, and so that lines up. I guess it's literally because it was lower on the alcohol spectrum. So I was like, porter.
I thought you were told it was a porter by somebody who was there, and I was about to call them out, but now that's not true. So
no, I think I just interpreted it as porter because it also has been sitting in my fridge for 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's true. It has been a while.
We took up 10 minutes worth of beer talk, but it kind of became more than beer talk when we got to talk a little bit more about Elkton, which I love. And we got to talk about your diet, which I also love, except for the shake thing. But, we discussed that. And so we only have a little bit of time before you got to jump into our next segment. Is there any little thing you want to touch on before we go? Real quick, I will say that between the last podcast and this one, the Microsoft acquisition of Activision Blizzard happened. We have a whole bonus episode on it, and we have a whole stream on it. So we're not going to talk much about it on this episode, but we're going to point you in that direction. So if you are wondering what our thoughts are on that and you did not catch the bonus episode, then go find that, or just go to Twitch or YouTube. There should be a discussion there where you can actually look at our faces when we talk about it. So
I will say, really quickly, It Takes Two is wonderful. I've continued to play it with my wife, and it really does pull gameplay mechanics from every single genre except for like sports and racing. There's a dungeon crawling segment in it that is like amazing, and I kind of wish the whole game was that because it was done. They're all done so well, and the art style is amazing, and the story is hilarious, and like it's mechanically sound. It's not buggy. I've had like one silly glitch where I like jumped into a place I probably shouldn't have been trying to do anyway, and I just want to highlight the fact that I didn't know that going into the game that it does borrow from different mechanics. It's a solid platformer. It's a solid third-person shooter. There's a dungeon crawling segment. There's lots of like on the rails jumping and platforming and swinging, puzzle solving. Like it's awesome. And there's so many different genres wrapped up. There's also some callbacks to like the original games that they had made. So Brothers, Tale of Two Sons. There's a boss fight in there that's mimicked exactly in It Takes Two. And it's like the exact same boss fight. And it's awesome because it's a callback without being obvious. And because the enemy's different, but everything about the boss fight's the same. So it's wonderful. Nice. It's awesome. You got it for me for Christmas. It's relevant on the podcast. So I'm loving it. My wife is asking me to play it. She's like, I was hoping we could play some It Takes Two tonight. And it's really like stretched her gaming ability too. It is. It's awesome. And I'm not grabbing the controller from her. I'm not offering help. Like she's struggling like crazy. And I know like there's instances where you each have to go through like a pretty difficult platforming segment. And I will go through way faster than her. And I'll just be waiting at the end, waiting for her. But instead of like coaching her or trying to grab the controller, I just sit there in silence and just watch and like she figures it out. And she's having a great time, and it's stretching her gaming prowess. I'm hoping this is a gateway game to like get her into more things that we can play together.
Well, it's good too because it exposes her to a lot of different types of things, so you can point to it and say, "This is like the dungeon crawling section of It Takes Two. Did you like that? No, I hated it. Okay, then we won't play it. Did you like this section? Like, and then you have the other games. That's good. That's great. I find that my wife prefers she doesn't want me to grab the controller and do it for her, but she does like me to coach her a little bit. But I only ever coach her when it seems like she's struggling with like what buttons to press. Right? Like I try to help her figure out the button layout, and that's about it. Or I help her try to figure out like I won't give her the exact like button combination. Sometimes that's impossible, but I will just sort of coach her and be like, so this is how you're going to want to do that. Make sure you hold the button down longer, blah, 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 or wait like a beat before you press again or whatever. Some of those jumping. She wants to keep like dashing when she's like hasn't reached the apex of the jump. And so she keeps like, she doesn't get the vertical. She gets the horizontal. So anyway, things that are intuitive to us that aren't to them. We're gonna have a whole podcast about it, and It Takes Two is probably gonna come up. But yes, me and my wife
Valentine's Day topic.
Yeah, it is. Me and my wife are loving it a lot. It's not what we're doing this year, but it is a good one. My wife and I are loving the game a lot too. But we have not. I mean, we've only played twice. There are times when we sit down and we go like, okay, I would love to play It Takes Two right now, but also I would love to either watch this or I'm just so tired and exhausted and brain fried. You know what I mean? But she's asking me to play
something passive.
Yeah. I do. So I've been the one. I think I have been more of an impediment than her, not because I don't want to play with her. It's just because the times we play are actually not my typical gaming time. So I'm not in like a gaming mindset. I'm like I'm going to sit down and watch a show with my wife and relax and passive mindset.
Yep.
And so I've been but last night I was like, oh man, this would be a really good time to play It Takes Two. And she was like, we should play it. I would like to play it if you want. And I was like, oh, I really want to, but I also want to not. So yeah, I just need to figure out how to reorient my mind or find like a time that is where I'm in that mindset to do it. But yeah, it's great though. Awesome. It Takes Two is one of our favorite things, but
doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Oh, okay. I was on a journey with you for a little while.
Good, because every episode's a journey. What's your favorite thing this week?
My favorite thing hasn't happened, but it's about to on Wednesday of this week. And it is the day. Huh?
Oh, no, never mind. That's Friday. Never mind.
Oh, no, that is coming too. That's actually more guaranteed than what I'm excited about. What I'm excited about is the return of my children to school for the first time since December 17th.
Wow. Goodness gracious, man.
Yeah. They have been in this house in quarantine because I contracted COVID, which required a 10-day quarantine for both kids. And then at like day 8 or 9 of mine, my wife contracted it and she tested positive, which resets the clock because the kids were with her the entire time I was trying to isolate. So my son's 2-week Christmas break from December 17th through New Year, it turned into an entire month off and a month and a half even. So he hasn't seen school in 6 weeks. And my little kid, the 2-year-old Jude, he was in daycare and he only went 4 days for the entire month of January. Well, and that was at the very, very beginning. So
January 29th snowstorm falls apart for you, or else they'll be back in 5 days.
Yeah, I don't want any more snow. Man, that sucks. I don't want any more COVID. I want them to go to school. I have like depleted. Oh yeah, and then this is my actual favorite thing. Is what I should say. I've depleted all my vacation hours, and lo and behold, there was an anonymous donor of 30 vacation hours to my pool, which is
I didn't know that was a thing.
Yeah, it's mentions you can donate your vacation hours directly to another employee. So that's what, 3 days ish, because 2 hours shy of so just about 3 more extra days, which I needed for today and tomorrow because my wife returned to work. She's vaccinated, so she only had a 5-day quarantine. So 5 days for her is up. She's back to work, and she's completely out of vacation hours as well. So we're like approaching the unpaid time off like limits for both of us, because when you're home with kids that can't go anywhere and they can't go to school, we have no childcare. That's what happens. So my actual favorite thing is the donation of the vacation hours, which took the pressure off of me and then my kids going back to school in 2 days. Nice. So hopefully by the time you hear this, they will have already been in school for like 2 weeks straight. And Termite is living high.
I feel like you should be able to work something out with your boss, but whatever.
Oh, they're all fine with it. There's no trouble. It's just like I was hitting that.
No, I know. That's what I'm saying is now you've burned up all your vacation it's not for the year, right? It's just the ones you've earned, what you've earned.
It's for everything. Yeah. I mean, I don't get an allotment each year. I get an allotment every pay period.
I see. Okay. Gotcha.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, my favorite thing is kind of similar. I have finally the kids sleeping thing is settling finally, because after after the holidays with people being here and then the new toddler bed for my son, just everything was all over the place. And my daughter happened to also at the same time be experiencing a sleep regression. And she also has gone through a thing where now she just spits out pacifiers. So she's weaning herself off of pacifiers right now because she won't take them. She just won't take them. She's like, get that thing out of my mouth. And so we've decided to go ahead and go right into cry it out method. And that's actually working really, really well. She had a couple of nights where she'd cry for like an hour and then fall asleep almost like on the dot on the hour. And now she like fusses she doesn't even really cry anymore. She's kind of like gets in her bed and blah, 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 and then falls asleep.
Nice.
So she's been doing great with sleep. As a result, we've been trying to we're starting the integration process of integrating her into the room with my son, because her crib's she sleeps in a pack and play in my office, and she's been sleeping in there since she's been born, since we took her home. And then we also have her crib in Gavin's room now, so in my son's room with his bed on the other side. So the intention is for them to be sleeping in the same room eventually, and to restore that room she's currently sleeping into an office / guest bedroom again. All my office stuff's still in there. But so anyways, part and parcel of all that, the nap time that is not dedicated to, like, the nap time that they don't share. So she has nap time. She has like a nap in the morning and then a nap in the afternoon. So that morning nap, she's now sleeping in that crib, which means that I finally have my office available to me again. My nice roll top desk, my big screen TV with my PS4 hooked up to it so I can remote play my PS5 from that room. My 2 screens, docking station, HDMI cord, Ethernet, going right into my computer instead of having to rely on Wi-Fi.
Yes.
Everything is the way it should be, is supposed to be in my work situation for like the first 4 hours of my day every day. And it's been that way for the last 2 work days. We've had all weekend, but the Friday was the first day that I was like, you can go into the office now if you want to work from there. I was like, yes. So I spent a good like hour of my work day on Friday lovingly resetting up my because I had taken it all down, just unhooked everything just so that it wasn't like draining power and stuff. So I lovingly reset things up. I made things more efficient with the cabling and stuff. All that's just to say, everything is just awesome with that space again. It's funny because during like peak pandemic time before my daughter was born, it was like, I'm spending too much time in this freaking office. I need to get out. And now I haven't had the office available to me for the last like 6 months.
So you're jonesing to get back in.
My
like,
office. Yes. So yeah, it's great. So anyways, that's my favorite thing, is just I have my office space back. So
and when the nighttime situation happens where they both sleep in the same room, you'll have your office back for podcast recording again and live streaming.
Yes. I think I'm gonna, as a celebration, I think I'm finally gonna get some like poster frames for some of my posters and some of the ones that are approved. And I'm gonna hang those up on the walls behind my chair, so that way I can have some swag on that, on those walls as well. So it'll have to go through the approval process of my wife, of course, but that is something I definitely want to do as celebration for podcasting again from the room. Oh,
and a really big fun live stream.
I have a freaking capture card now, so I want to use. I haven't gotten to use it yet, so we do need to start live streaming games. So we'll have to have a talk after this.
Yeah.
Anyways, so
I'm in.
That brings us to our final segment. We have 5 minutes for it. So DLC. DLC is for downloadable content. It is a segment of our show in which we break down a fun little mini discussion, sub-discussion, and talk about the things that may or may not be related to our podcast, but it's a conversation we normally have about video games. Tonight, it's kind of tangentially related, but it's more related to the Microsoft acquisitions. That's the only thing I'm going to bring up. Again, brief summary: Microsoft bought Activision Blizzard. It has shocked the gaming industry to its core, and so it's what everybody's talking about right now. So we're going to not really talk about it directly, but I'm using it to inspire the DLC, which is one of the most exciting things about that acquisition that we talked about in our bonus episode was the possibility of Microsoft's proprietary studios that aren't part of Activision Blizzard now could potentially make Blizzard games. And so I want to take that idea and I want to talk about proprietary studios making games, and I want to speculate what if another big purchase were to be made. Let's just go ahead and limit it to Sony. Let's say Sony decides to fire back by purchasing another big, game publisher, any of them, because we'll just pretend like money isn't an object in this scenario for Sony. But if they were to purchase anyone, not which one's the most likely, but if they were to purchase any, your DLC assignment for the day is to tell me what games you would want to see made by the Sony PlayStation studios, and which studio make which game. You're limited to the studios that PlayStation already owns for a hypothetical studio that they buy. Not just studio, but publisher. It could be a publisher. So there's it. Hit me with your best shot. I think I have one that
It's hard because with the Blizzard IP, there's so much stuff that I'm familiar with that I know other companies, other developers could do a lot of fun things with, like Resurrect.
I'll go
StarCraft
first, because you have time to think, because I have had time to think about mine, or I've thought about mine. So I think I'm going to go with I think I'm going to go with Take-Two. If Sony were to buy Take-Two, because then I would want to see 2 games in particular made by PlayStation Studios, and I need to think really quickly about which studios I want. But I'll throw the games out there, and then maybe you could weigh in as well on this one. I want to see Sony buy Take-Two, and then I want to see BioShock and Borderlands each made by at least a partnership with a current studio. So I'm thinking BioShock needs to be like Naughty Dog or Insomniac. Probably Naughty Dog, because they could deal with like I want to see Naughty Dog do something less like grounded in realism anyways. And I would love to see like Neil Druckmann's take, like storytelling take on like BioShock. Like where would he go with that universe that's already set up? And
that'd be solid.
And then I would definitely want to see like, oh man, it's so hard for Borderlands. Borderlands, I think, could really benefit from like a studio that does really good mechanics really well. So I guess I'd go with Insomniac for Borderlands, because they have the sense of humor, like the levity that Borderlands needs. They would need to still have like Gearbox involved. I would still want Gearbox obviously very involved, and if they could get the writer from 2 back, that would be even better. But like, I feel like Insomniac would take the mechanics of Borderlands to the next level. If you just look at all the creative guns they have in Ratchet and Clank, like the level of creativity coming out of that studio, it's like, yes, like I love what, Gearbox does with the guns, but they just need someone to push it over the edge. And that could be Insomniac really well. So those are going to be my picks there for that. And so any ideas for yourself?
I would like Sony to fully acquire Square Enix and take Final Fantasy and let the director of Final Fantasy 14 lead Final Fantasy 16 or 17 and bring back as much of the original like Squaresoft folks that they can possibly muster, because I don't know where all of them are, but I know that like Square Enix is a massive conglomerate, and a lot of those developers have kind of dispersed across various companies in Square Enix's umbrella. So like bring them all together and like either do the next Final Fantasy or do a full blown Final Fantasy 6 remake like Final Fantasy 7, but like use all the Final Fantasy 6's stuff and the composers and all those things, because when you have Sony expectations, when you have Sony money and
cross development and resources and all the engines they own,
all that stuff, I think you can come up with something
Final
amazing.
Fantasy and like Decima engine would be awesome. I know Luminous is also pretty good, or looks good so far, but I feel like any Final Fantasy game made with Decima would be awesome. I also I think in reverse, I would want Crystal Dynamics to fully take over Uncharted with like a good writing team from Naughty Dog, but that's it. Like Naughty Dog just contributes the writing, and then Crystal Dynamics makes the game, because they did such a good job with Tomb Raider, making Tomb Raider basically Uncharted, that I feel like they could just helm that entire franchise from now on and free up Naughty Dog to do other things. So that would be like a sort of reverse of that I would want to see. So I'm into it. Yes. Also, like Japan,
Crystal
I feel
Dynamics.
like they would have to put it under whatever I guess Team Asobi is it now Team Asobi, not Japan studio was officially like dismantled and incorporated. Okay, so Team Asobi would be like the group that organizes that the Final Fantasy effort you're talking about there, because you need it to be like a fully Japan endeavor. And so it would need to be like, if they had to put it under a specific studio, Team Asobi, but the Team Asobi would be acting more like a director for bringing in all that talent from previous Final Fantasy games to make it happen. I'm into it.
Ooh, never mind. Scratch everything. Here we go.
Scratch all that.
Crystal Dynamics, you mentioned them, and it made me think of this. Legacy of Kain reboot, full blown, like done. Sony buys Square Enix. They now have in-house Crystal Dynamics as a subsidiary, and they task them with Legacy of Kain, the resurrection of that entire IP, and they just make that. That's what it is from the ground up, and amazing with Sony money and Sony expectations and Sony like requirements for quality, and it's like Last of Us Part 2 level budget and like absolutely incredible game. Let's go. That's what I want. That's my DLC answer. Mic drop.
Is there anything from Square Enix you'd want to see Santa Monica work on?
Oh man, they could. I mean, everything. Santa Monica.
Depending on how like Forspoken goes, I would love to see Santa Monica like do a Forspoken sequel, right? Like just give their like level of quality touch to an already looks like a game that's gonna already be pretty quality.
It's hard to like. There's a lot of action Japanese RPG games out there already that Santa Monica could do the action part of really well. That it's hard to like cross those streams to be like, can they do it better than Square Enix's developers can do? But what were we gonna say? You had an idea.
Oh, I was gonna say that, like, specifically, like, the having them partner at least for the combat mechanics for Final Fantasy, like a Final Fantasy, one of the Final Fantasy 7 remakes. Like, I feel like
Yeah.
Santa Monica would do like they're already like that level of strategic, almost all like Souls light combat with God of War. Not saying that has to be in Final Fantasy, but just like that level of like precision and flow and artistry in there. I feel like they could just smooth out like the rough edges of Seven's combat system. But anyways, that's enough of that. That is DLC. We want to hear what your ideas are. What should Sony buy? And if so, and if Sony buys something, which one of their studios should they put on to what games of that purchase? A little confusing to say out loud, but I think you guys get the idea. We want to hear those thoughts and more. So if you want to tell Termite what Guerrilla Games should work on from what other big, EA game, then you can hit him up at
80bitpodsmash.com, 80bit podsmash. That's our landing website. It has links to all of our social media outlets so that you can interact with us. It has Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, our Discord. It's all there. You can hit us up, talk to us live. We'd love to respond. We'd love to engage with our community. And if you are listening to this podcast by way of, say, like YouTube or somewhere silly, and you want to actually hear like the audio on a platform of your choice, on your phone, on your app, you can find links to Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, as well as other things like Stitcher, iHeartRadio. The links are all at 80bitpodsmash.com. If we don't have a space where you want us to be, let us know, and we will put our podcast on your platform just for you. And you can do that through 80bitpodsmash.com.
Sweet. All right. Well, then let's talk about a proprietary Sony studio. It's finally hit Guerrilla Games.
Yes.
I know that you've been a follower of Guerrilla for a lot longer than I have.
Mm-hmm.
And
since the beginning.
I was late to the Horizon Zero Dawn stage thanks to Breath of the Wild overshadowing it when it came out. Also, I don't know if I had a PlayStation when it came out. Either way, it doesn't matter. I was like 2018. I think it was like December of 2017, early 2018. So I was like 6-7 months behind on that game. But I fell in love with it. And was so excited to add this to our list of developers to cover. And now we have a great excuse with Forbidden West coming out in 2 weeks. Oh my gosh, that's crazy. Yeah. It's crazy that we're at the point of recording it. It's still like a month away for us, but we're recording the episode. So it's like, yes.
I'm so hyped for it. It's going to be so good.
I'm getting more hyped for it the more footage they're showing. I obviously, it once again is a bit overshadowed by Elden Ring for me, and there's nothing I can do about that. But it has the advantage of coming out first. So I'm going to get like a solid week with it before I touch Elden Ring. Yeah. And who knows? If I'm really, really into it and feel like I just want to push through, then I might even delay starting up Elden Ring for it. So we'll see. But it's got promise. It's freaking Horizon Zero. It's Horizon Forbidden West. It's once again back in that. They had the story trailer recently and the music.
Yeah, that's me. Yes.
Yes.
That's what got me hyped more for this than anything yet. Like they did a full state of play that showed like combat, traversal mechanics, and like all the things, new weapons, new enemies and stuff. And I'm like, okay, this is gonna be good. I'm excited. Yeah, and then like the story trailer drops, and I'm like,
well, because it was always such a story-driven game, and we'll get to that because specifically talking about Guerrilla, that is something that I think will come up again. So, anyways, let's talk about Guerrilla Games though. So with these dev profiles, we always start with the beginning. We start at the basics. We say who are they, what games are they known for, and what is their story. So yes, they are a Dutch developer owned by Sony. They are known obviously for the Horizon series, Zero Dawn and Forbidden West, and then also earlier than that, since that game is only 5 years old, before that they were known for Killzone pretty much primarily. So not much on their track record, quite frankly, but we'll talk about that obviously. Currently they are led, I kind of like to, most of the time these developers are still led by the people that founded them. This is a case where that is absolutely not the case. So since they don't really come up in the history, I do want to talk about the current leaders. They're currently led by a woman named Angie Smets. Jen Bart Van Beek is a guy. And then Michiel van der Leeuw. So I'm sure I butchered those Dutch names. Those are the current leaders of Guerrilla Games. But let's talk about their history. So they have a really, really, really interesting history. and they've changed hands a lot with lots of different names. So I'll let you hit up first.
Sure.
How did they get started?
The last nugget of information, they are stationed in Amsterdam in the Netherlands.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's their key headquarters right now. That's where they exist. So think about that whenever you're playing a game. Like, that's their influence. They are, what is it, like a democratic monarchy? That's kind of their government structure. It's a little different than us. I guess it's
and
more
they've had
similar to,
legalized weed for a lot longer than we have.
Right. Yeah. And Amsterdam's crazy. There's a lot of legal things there. So like, it's just cool. It's a great, like, it's something I want to start adding to our developer profiles about like where they exist, what cities and what countries they're in, because the people's lives are so different there than they are here in America that like it affects their development cycles. It affects their art creation, their what they go through, their emotions, and like their day to day,
their culture,
and
their
like
point of
culture,
view, their worldview. Mm-hmm,
yep.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
it's so interesting.
Aside,
there's so many like. It's just I do think it's really interesting how many quality European developers there are out there that we don't typically like think of, but because their games are so influential in America. But yeah, Guerrilla, CD Projekt Red, Rare. Yeah, there's a lot of really good stuff happening in that part of the world. And so, yeah, definitely worth highlighting.
So, going back to your original history here, they're actually a merger of 3 different Dutch video game studios: Orange Games, Digital Infinity. I almost say Digital Foundry because it looks the same.
I know.
And Digital Foundry is also
Infinity
Europe.
Ward when I wrote it down. I was
oh,
like,
yeah.
Ward. I mean, Digital Infinity.
And Formula Game Development. So, Formula is the third one. Orange Games was founded in 93 by Arjen Brousse, co-designer of the 1994 game Jazz Jackrabbit. If anyone has ever played that, I know I have not. Digital Infinity was founded by Arnout van der Kamp in 95. Formula was founded by Martin de Ronda in 98.
I couldn't find games from any of those companies. Like, Arjan made the Jackrabbit one, but like, he didn't make that as part of Orange Games. He founded Orange Games after he co-developed that. So, But anyways, so they merged into the Lost Boys, owned by Mikhail Moll in 2000, and then that company merged into Icon Media Lab in 2001. And then Michael Moll formed Media Republic and acquired 75% of Lost Boys in 2003, and then renamed it Guerrilla Games. So it changed hands over the course of 3 years, pretty much. They merged into Lost Boys. Like, those 3 companies were like merged into Lost Boys in 2000, and then 3 years later, they were like changed hands like twice, and then were bought back, and then finally they got the name Guerrilla Games, and they've been Guerrilla since 2003.
And so, a funny little insight into PlayStation history: Herman Hulst was replaced as the managing director in November of 2000 for the Lost Boys, who then later went on to be the head of Sony, what then was called Worldwide Studios, which I think later Sean Layden took over, and then Sean Layden is now gone. But just in the history of PlayStation, Herman Hulst came out of this camp, and so it makes sense later. It's a context, right? Like, there's the deal, right, for acquiring Guerrilla Games, or whenever we get there in our history lesson here. But that happened in the year 2000.
Cool. Yep. So after 2003, they began work on Killzone, the first one, and a game called Shell Shock Nom 67. A game that you probably haven't heard of because it bombed. I didn't actually mean that pun, but now I'm going to always intend my puns there, so pun intended. Killzone, though, was a huge success. Widely hyped, crazy, just blew it out of the park. Sony was so impressed by Killzone that they signed an exclusivity agreement in 2004 and then fully bought that. There apparently was other companies like Square Enix, I think, was like eyeing them for a purchase, an acquisition. And Sony's like, no, they're ours. So they bought them in 2005 outright. And then they would release 3 more Killzone games: Killzone Liberation for PSP in 2006, Killzones 2 and 3 for both for PS3 in 2009 and 2011 respectively. And then, 3 more Killzone games, because they would do Killzone Shadowfall in 2013 for the PS4. And that was the last Killzone game before they finally began work on Horizon Zero Dawn. And that was revealed in 2015 and released in 2017 to huge critical acclaim. And so that's where we are now, on the cusp of the sequel to that game. So,
rewind the clock a little bit. List. And there's an entire wing of Guerrilla called Guerrilla Cambridge, a British studio in Cambridge, Britain, founded under Sony Computer Entertainment in July of 97 through the buyout of the game development division of CyberLife Technology. In 2010, Sony Computer Entertainment Studio Cambridge was restructured as a sister studio to Guerrilla Games under the name Guerrilla Cambridge. It has since been shut down in 2017, but the studio was best known for developing the Medieval series on PlayStation, and they also developed a Killzone game for the PlayStation Vita, which is arguably one of the best PlayStation Vita games. He's on the top 10 best Vita games ever. You go out there, Killzone Mercenary, which is another entry in the Killzone franchise. So don't forget about Guerrilla Cambridge, not physically related to anyone going on in the Netherlands, but still because of Sony and their umbrella and their money and their conglomeration, like it exists. So there you go.
Yeah, I also forgot to include in my little notes, and it kind of glossed over. They have made more games than that. They released 4 games for the Game Boy back when they were still Lost Boys. And I'm only bringing it up because it's important. Basically, they started making Game Boy Color games, but they found that publishers would rather release games, including licensed characters. So the studio didn't want to have to give up their intellectual property, basically. And so they decided to do work for hire projects. So they made 4 handheld games: Dizzy's Candy Quest, Rhino Rumble, came out in 2002, Black Belt Challenge, and Invader. I bring it up only because Guerrilla that whole work for hire project thing would actually inspire the name Guerrilla when they would finally be reacquired and rebranded as that, because they were guerrillas. I guess guerrilla mercenaries and guerrillas are you could have a soldier that's not a mercenary still engage in guerrilla tactics. But still, there's enough of a connection there. Mercenaries are known for guerrilla tactics that I can see how it would lead them to that moniker. So anyways, cool. Well, that's their history. That's where they come from. And hopefully you got some cool, fun facts there. So really kind of interesting history. Not the most interesting that we've covered, I think, but it's still some pretty cool little factoids about these guys and this company that has just sort of changed hands multiple times. So let's jump into our next thing. Let's get personal. What's your favorite Guerrilla Games game?
It has to be Horizon Zero Dawn as well. I know you had wrote that as yours, but I do want to take my history with Guerrilla. As you said, you jumped in with Horizon Zero Dawn. So back in 2004, when Killzone was coming out, Killzone was touted and marketed as the Halo killer. This is Sony's answer to Microsoft to make a first-person shooter to utilize the PlayStation 2's network adapter that you had to pay separately for with a hard drive, and it was a whole thing. But later PS2 Slims would have the Ethernet port built in, which is behind Xbox because they came out with an Ethernet port installed right away. Dreamcast also dealing with internet stuff, and GameCube also having its attachments. That whole generation was late to the game with internet stuff. Killzone was the answer. Here we go, online shooters just like Halo. It's going to be super high quality, big budget, gorgeous graphics, and it's arguably one of the best looking PS2 games, along with Shadow of the Colossus and God of War 2 and those later PS2 games that look phenomenal on that console, pushing it to its limits. I rented that game a lot, and I think more than once. When I say a lot, usually we rent games once. Killzone was a repeat hit. Absolutely fantastic game, solid shooter. The DualShock 2 specifically controller just didn't feel nearly as good to me as the Xbox controllers did for shooters. And Xbox had that nice spongy trigger with the kind of the analog pressure sensitivity in it, and which may or may not be true. I just feel like it's got that, even though it probably doesn't for driving games. Anyway, PlayStation DualShock had an R2 button. That's it. It's a button. It's not a trigger. You just press it, and it's a shoulder button. It works. It's fine, but the joysticks didn't feel right for aiming, and it just didn't land as the Halo killer. It still was very successful. It earned greatest hits and platinum status in North America. There's enough that they would get brought on for the sequel. And the sequel story I'll share later. I didn't play Killzone 2, I still have never played 3. I played 2 way late, 2018. When I brought my PS3 with me to San Diego for a work trip, I wanted to get some quick trophies and experience what the sequel to Halo 2, or to Halo, wow. See, there you go, Halo Killer. Killzone 2 was all about. So I played that. I am currently playing, of course, we played Horizon Zero Dawn. We got the platinum trophies in it. But I'm currently playing Killzone Mercenary because as one of the best PlayStation Vita games, I was like, you know what? Guerrilla's in the news again. I'm jonesing for something fun on the Vita to play. So I started a campaign in Killzone Mercenary, and it is a rock solid shooter on the PlayStation Vita. I'm surprised constantly by the level of detail, the animation quality, the models, the guns, the shooting, the story, everything. It is a full-blown console experience on handheld, and the Vita continues to surprise me and stuff that's on it. It really is a solid console with good stuff. So that's my brief history with Guerrilla. I love them, and they're definitely cemented as one of my favorite studios.
Nice. Awesome. Well, how has Guerrilla brought innovation to the industry?
Oh, I have the long answer for this one too. Well, you can go ahead
Go
if you want
for
to
it.
start.
No, you
Okay.
got it. Long
Just
answer.
talk. Okay. Well, yeah. Carrying
I
on
know, you just
my
talked.
history lesson here. Yeah, that's fine. In E3 of 2005, Killzone 2 was showed off for the first time, and this is a major deal in the gaming industry because this was the first like true PS3 game shown off on the heels of the release of the PlayStation 3, and it was gorgeous and it was surreal and it was unbelievable. Sure enough, a lot of people believed it. But what actually happened and was revealed in a documentary called No Clip, Danny O'Dwyer over on YouTube. Go look for No Clip. There's a whole documentary about Horizon Zero Dawn who documents the beginning of Guerrilla's Killzone 2 situation here. They received PS3 development kits the day the demo was supposed to go live. So they had 0 development time on a PS3 dev kit, and Guerrilla promised that this was running on PS3 hardware. It was rendered in real time, and it was totally a cinematic. Everything was pre-rendered, and they backtracked after the fact by saying they pre-rendered it with, quote, PS3 in mind, so it wasn't actually a lie, meaning there was like some limit on what they could do. But clearly, they had like shown something they were never going to be able to recreate. And if you rewind the clock,
oh gosh, nobody's ever done that before.
Right? Bungie did the exact same thing with Halo 2, except they actually had closer to hardware specs with which rendering, but they had to make a whole lot of compromises. And this is the answer to what has Guerrilla brought as far as innovation to the industry. If you look at the comparison shots between Halo 2's very first unveiling and Halo 2's launch, you can see the compromises. There is a bigger gap there than what Guerrilla had to do to get Killzone 2 to look what they did. It is next level and darn near impossible, like what they have accomplished. Killzone 2.
I don't see why developers can't just be told, like, why don't you give them a specs and they can just make it on similar hardware,
right,
on a PC, right? Like that's, I mean, there's nothing that a PlayStation. I know that like consoles are really efficiently well-designed machines. I know that the PS5 is a marvel of SSD technology. There's no way it's that much better than what a PC could do, that like you couldn't just make it on a similarly spec PC and then transfer it to the right.
Well,
maybe with the PS3 architecture would have been different back then, but like
way different.
Way.
Yeah, the cell compute, like the cell processor, the developers didn't know what it could do. Like they didn't know what PC processor that like performance wise, they don't have a clue. Like, and actually the cell processor can do astronomically new, amazing things. There's an article that came out within the last 12 months that was like, it could render a modern game from today if it was developed for like correctly. Like the cell processor's capabilities are insane, but developers didn't know how to program for it. It was nothing like the x86 architecture we have today across all of our platforms, except for Switch, which is ARM. That's different. But yeah, your question is a well-founded question. Why couldn't they just match the specs? Because they didn't know what the PS3 could do without the dev kit, because there was nothing to compare it to. It was too different. It was an entirely different proprietary thing, like consoles were back then. We had the luxury of today where the PS5 is the same.
Yeah, it makes me wonder if like if the PS3 had been more successful and that cell architecture or whatever were more widely accepted, then perhaps like it could have changed the way processing worked, right? If it's that good that it could render modern games, then it says they were onto something with that architecture, but had to cave just due to the universality of x86. So who knows? There's an alternate universe out there.
The PS3, I mean, the developers came back and made that console sell more than 360, more than the Xbox.
Right.
So what they did with it was magic and wonderful, ultimately.
Sure.
But this was like the beginning of PS3 when like we saw Fight Night round 4 or round 3 look garbage compared to Xbox, or we saw Rainbow Six Vegas look terrible and run horribly on PS3 compared to Xbox because the developers didn't know how to port games to it.
I just feel like I do feel like Guerrilla got a bad rap on this one because like maybe it's because they had made fewer games and so it was easier to pick on them at that point. They weren't as big as Bungie at that point, you know, so Halo probably got a pass where they didn't.
Right.
And yet they were able to still pull it off like relatively well compared to like even other games. Like CD Projekt Red did not get enough flack for their downgrade of The Witcher 3. And that was only because The Witcher 3 was a good enough game that the graphical downgrade wasn't a big deal. But like had The Witcher 3 been as bad of a game as Cyberpunk on launch, then that graphic thing would have been hit on a lot harder, I think, because goodness gracious, I don't know if you remember. I still remember back in like 2013 or whatever when they revealed The Witcher, 2013 or 14, when they revealed what The Witcher was supposed to be, quote unquote, and it was like, yeah, it looked like, I mean, it was so cool and so realistic. And then I remember, the comparison shots, it was disappointing what the final product was. Not yikes so much. Like, it was fine. It still looked like a good game for 2015, but it wasn't what they advertised. It's just like that kind of thing happens all the time. Anthem's another great example, as recently as 2018 or whatever that game came out. So this, we're not, that's the kind of thing still happens, and to much less like final result effects than what Guerrilla was going to pull off.
And and to continue the same thread, like Killzone Shadowfall was a launch title on PS4 that looked just as good as late generation titles. Like usually when a launch console comes out, launch games, they look good, but they really don't know how to flex the console's muscle yet because the developers hadn't had a chance to optimize for it. Killzone Shadowfall looks, to this day, it holds up. It's incredible. So does Killzone 2 and 3. Like, they all look amazing with absolute next level animations and mechanics. They're solid. They're not buggy. Like, Guerrilla Games knows what they're doing. They just aren't getting the notoriety through the Killzone saga that they are getting now through Horizon Zero Dawn. So they're finally like thriving.
Killzone unfortunately suffers from that mid 2000s grungy shooter.
Yeah, they really did.
Just like they were a needle in a haystack full of that kind of thing. So Horizon Zero Dawn gets to benefit from being a almost entirely unique premise for a game in something that we don't see. So I'll say that I'll just say that they basically, my kind of innovations that I think they brought are a lot shorter because you have more of that historical knowledge. In my case, I think the Decima engine's a big deal. Big enough of a deal that Kojima wanted to use it for Death Stranding. So he saw something special in what they were able to accomplish with Decima. So I think that's a big deal. So anytime a developer develops an engine that is talked about, like newsworthy, right? Then I think that it's clearly a good, like you said, they have a good solid handling of like video game technology and know how to leverage it to make good games. Despite the fact they've only made you can pretty much count on two hands the amount of games they've ever made. I think it's pretty remarkable. And then on top of that, they've been able to do that, maintain all that quality despite all these mergers, acquisitions, and leadership changes. I think that's remarkable. So something about that core group of developers is able to work on things really well. Whatever that company culture is or whatever that company standard is, they're able to kind of maintain that. I think that's pretty cool because I think there's lots of companies who have like less upheaval in their leadership and have released much crappier games, right?
Yeah. And you think about like they developed an engine. We're talking like competing with Unreal and Unity and stuff where like if you and I wanted to stand up a new game tomorrow, we would probably just go get Unity and that would be our engine. And like that's done, right? All we have to do is add our assets, our animation, models, gameplay, mechanics, etc. Like the engine can handle that. No, they stood up a brand new engine for 2013's Killzone Shadowfall.
Many companies clearly do it. They just don't always reveal what their engine is.
Usually it's proprietary. And it's like, we're going to use it for this set of games, and then it's done. It's
like Decima's proprietary, right? Like, technically Sony owns Decima, because Sony owns... But what I'm saying is, like, the engine itself doesn't usually get, like, that notoriety, that news discuss. It doesn't get discussed like that. Only when it starts to become a problem, like Frostbite, right?
And Telltale Games engine was garbage, and it was showing as their newer releases before they went under.
But I could probably like count on, like I said, once again, I could probably count on two hands the number of like engines I know that are owned by companies that aren't Unreal and Unity. You know, where it's like
it's not a lot,
right? It's not a lot, but yet they're so clear that like clearly Bethesda has some engine that they use. From Software has an engine they've apparently been using since Demon Souls, right? Like there are companies that have these engines that they have, like you said, developed and stood up alongside their games, and they just don't market them and they don't publicize them, probably to keep them under wraps. But cool. All right. Well, so here's I reworded this question. I hope you noticed that I reworded this question because I used to have it worded differently in our other dev profiles. So I finally found a wording that makes me happier. So what, if anything, is something that makes a Guerrilla game a Guerrilla game. So what makes a Guerrilla game a Guerrilla game? What's that je ne sais quoi? And what is something where you like hear it, see it? It could be as simple as just like a sound effect that they use in lots of their games, or it could be like a gameplay philosophy, deep as that. But what makes Guerrilla Games identifiable?
There is a look and feel of their animation style and model fidelity that to me oozes Guerrilla. And if you don't know what I'm talking about, it's very difficult to put words to. So I'll use a movie analogy. If you look at a Disney studio movie, Encanto, and you look at Pixar, Luca, and you look at is it Dreamscape?
DreamWorks.
Like Gru and the Minions, Madagascar.
Yeah.
What is that movie called with Gru and the Minions?
Despicable
Me? Despicable Me?
Yeah.
Right. Like that studio and Sing and like those other kind of movies that come out of that, right? If you look at the movies and you don't know what they are and you just looked at their graphic style or their models or their like facial structures and the color palettes that they use and borrow from, like there's a feel that's communicated through that art.
You might not be able to say who made them, but you'd be able to say which ones were made by the same people.
Exactly. You'd be able to lump them together. Yes. Guerrilla has that. And I really noticed it because I've played so many Guerrilla games, and I'm playing Killzone Mercenary now. And even though it was made by Guerrilla at Cambridge, entirely different studio, it has that same look to it. And then playing Killzone 2 after Horizon Zero Dawn, it had that same look to it. Playing Killzone Shadowfall at the PS4 launch, like I had played Killzone 1 on PS2, like there's a common thread. And you can see
Having not played Killzone, I cannot really speak to this question. That said,
right.
I'm wondering if is it, and I'm spitballing here only because this is something that stood out to me with Horizon. Is it possible it has something to do with like the aiming, the way that the aiming looks and feels? Because there was something that felt really good about and different about the way that like aiming with the bow in Horizon worked. And I wondered if that had something to do with, you know, their work on Killzone being a first-person shooter.
Probably.
It felt better than like aiming in God of War with this, you know, very similar thing. You know, in God of War you can aim to throw the axe, and again the camera zooms in right behind Kratos' shoulder in the same way and kind of slows down time too, depending on certain circumstances. And you have something similar with Aloy in Horizon, but it feels better in Horizon than it ever felt in God of War. And that's fine because God of War is mostly you're meant to go run and hack and slash things. You're not meant to sit there and just chuck your axe over and over again. But in Horizon Zero Dawn, you are meant to spend most of the game just shooting arrows at stuff. I don't know. Could it be that? I don't know. Because I haven't played Killzone to say, but I'm wondering if, you know, you spend so much time aiming in those games that I'm wondering if that what you're describing has something to do with that.
It's part of it. Yeah, that's like the feel of a Guerrilla game. So like when you're playing it, the way that it feels when you play it, and that has evolved. I mean, like Killzone 1 was awful compared to now, but at the time it was the best shooter on PS2. Like that feeling you are describing with Horizon Zero Dawn being standout in the context of things coming out around 2017, 2018, 2016, like back in 2004 when Killzone had come out for PlayStation, no other shooter like SOCOM felt like garbage, hot garbage compared to Killzone. So like, yeah, exactly. There's a mechanic, like a technical prowess here that's like an excellence that stands out, and that is Guerrilla when it comes to certain things.
Yep. Oh, you know what I was going to say about Guerrillas? Something that makes a Guerrilla game a Guerrilla game. I feel like Killzone, what I have read about it is that it was very narrative heavy. And I've also heard Horizon Zero Dawn described as like if Monster Hunter had an actual narrative. And I feel like that's a really apt description there. It's like very narrative driven. So I would say that would be my je ne sais quoi answer, is the heavy narrative games. Yeah. Awesome. All right. Well, final question, and we can end out and hopefully end on time. Oh, it makes me so happy when we end on time.
Look at that, you know?
What is something you want to see more of or less of from Guerrilla in the future? I'll hit this one because I actually have an answer for it, unlike the last question. I think I'd like to see them do something else. I think after I want, similar to like Naughty Dog and well, Naughty Dog, Insomniac, they get to do whatever they want, I feel like, right? Like, you want to make a Ratchet and Clank game, go for it, Insomniac. You want to make Spider-Man, go for it. Wolverine, sure. Like, once you're done with your Marvel phase, you want some Star Wars. I don't know, right? Like Insomniac gets to do that. I feel like Naughty Dog, though, is one of those studios that similarly is sort of just trapped in the IPs that everybody expects from them. So, as soon as Last of Us Part 2 finished, it was like, are they going to do Last of Us Part 3, or are they going to do Uncharted next? And it's like, no, let them do something new. And I really hope that Guerrilla has proven that they can take a new IP and do something awesome with it. And since they're so good at writing narratives, since they are so good, they have clearly a good writing staff and a good grasp on how narrative structure works. Yeah, I just, I'm a sucker for good narrative, so I want to see that Horizon Zero Dawn storytelling prowess, but like, let them play in a new IP in a new world. So I don't know where they're gonna go with the with the story of Horizon Forbidden West. They could presumably wrap it up if they wanted to, or they could leave it open to a part 3. And in either case, I'd be happy with that. But like, maybe if they do a part 3, maybe after that, like, let them do something new. But I would also be okay with like a new IP, I would also be okay with the Horizon spinoff or even a prequel game that takes place before Zero Dawn, right? If you don't know what that means in the game, then like, I won't spoil anything, but like, let's just say there was a world before the world of Horizon Zero Dawn, and it was much more similar to our world. So it'd be really cool to do a game that kind of combined the Killzone vibe, where it's more of a kind of militaristic shooter, sci-fi shooter, but put it in Horizon Zero Dawn's world before Zero Dawn, and make it so that like, you have, it'd be more of a military shooter. Maybe it's from Elizabeth's point of view, or maybe it's from a different character's point of view, but something where it's like, it takes place in the world before. And I feel like they could really marry the two games they've done. I think that would be something really cool. But I just want to see more from them. I feel like they need to grow. Like, whatever Sony needs to do to invest in this company, they've been putting out quality stuff for years. So give them bigger teams that will enable them to work on more projects so that we can see more Guerrilla Games, instead of something that like, they're now on like a 5-year development cycle. And I know most developers are, but like, I feel like they could grow and put out more stuff if Sony were to really invest in them. Like, I feel like they've earned it at this point. They're one of Sony's oldest studios. They deserve to like get some growth and some of that delicious Sony money to do so.
It's funny because your answer is exactly what happened with Horizon Zero Dawn. Yeah. So, like, if you would have asked me this question before Horizon Zero Dawn's announcement, like when Killzone Shadowfall was coming out in 2013 with PlayStation, if you'd have been like, what do you want to see more from Guerrilla in the future? Boom, there's your answer. Boom, there's Horizon Zero Dawn. Your answer fulfilled. Like, that's exactly what they did. More growth, new IP, entirely different direction, like the Killzone vibe, entirely the grungy first-person shooter, military-esque, like, analogous to Hitler and the Reich and the Germany and the oppressive like military and militaristic society. And that, I mean, there's a lot of probably like white rescue heroism that's going on in that world. And then boom, like, here's Horizon Zero Dawn, turn all that upside down, entirely new direction, entirely new IP. We did it. Like, check that box.
That's what I'm
like,
saying.
now,
they did it. So like, prove like they've proven they can do it. So
again?
Now don't just make them just a Horizon. Right, that's my thing. Is like, Horizon is great, but it has an expiration date. There's gonna be a point at which if Horizon like 8 comes out, like, I'm gonna roll my eyes. Right. That's what I'm saying. Is like, don't get them stuck in just being a shop that makes Horizon. Like, let them make it and fulfill their vision for it, and then move on. Then let them do something else. Let them do something new and totally, because Horizon was so innovative and unique in the industry.
I'd love to be in the room where it happened with all of like the discussions among Guerrilla switching from Killzone to Horizon, because it really was like a genre translation as well. Like, we're not doing first person shooter, we're going open world. Like, what? Like, you're telling, it'd be like Call of Duty just go into Far Cry, like, boom, but even more, because Far Cry is still a shooter, like even more separate from that. Like, Horizon Zero Dawn was a complete turnaround for that studio. It happened once.
Yeah, nobody knows
so maybe
how the game
it could happen again. That's it.
The art
or
of
how
trade,
the sausage,
how the sausage
gets made.
You trying to sneak that one past me, but you can't.
Hey, yeah. But that's, cool. I'm with you. Like, from the future, like, let's see. I think Horizon Forbidden West is really going to show off the best that Guerrilla has ever done. I feel like they're going to optimize the formula from Horizon Zero Dawn, and they're going to
the new
build on
technology
that.
from the PS5. Please, well, I guess they have to make it for PS4. Dang it!
Yeah, it still has the PS4 like limiting factor. So what's coming next is like we're detaching from PS4, detaching from the previous generation. In 5 years from now, so 2027, we'll probably have a PS5 Pro.
Oh, that hurts. It's too long, man. That's
whatever next they're working on is already in the pipeline. I'm sure
my kids are going to be like, I get it. I get what we have a whole topic about this coming up, guys, is the increasing development cycles, but I totally get why God of War is a 2-parter now instead of a trilogy, because Corey Balrog is right. Like, he doesn't want his kids to be going into college when they finally finish God of War, right? So the story. Yeah, this development cycle thing is getting nuts. Like, anyways, that's another topic for another time, but that does hurt me a little bit to think that like Horizon Forbidden West is coming out this year. Yay. But if they keep at the pace they're going, then 5 years from now we'll get another Guerrilla game. And so God forbid that Horizon Forbidden West end on a cliffhanger, because if it ends on a cliffhanger, we're sitting here like my oldest in 5 years, he will be 7 years old, right? So he will probably be waiting for the game. We'll probably be standing in line together waiting, like getting that game from GameStop, and that scares the crap out of me. Time marches endlessly forward, and we are all subject to the inevitability of our own mortality. Everyone.
Horizon Zero Dawn came out when
and thinking about my son as a 7-year-old is what got me there.
There you go, because that happened to me. Hey, like,
right.
My son was not even 2 when Horizon Zero Dawn came out, and here we are with Forbidden West, and he'll be 7 this year. So
Yep. Wow. Oh man, good stuff. All right, any other final thoughts on what you want to see more or less of from them?
Nope.
I don't want to see a Killzone. There are probably Killzone fans out there. I'm sorry, guys. I don't necessarily want to see a Killzone,
something new
Killzone game.
Yep.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, okay, cool. Well, that's such a good ending point. Look at that time. Oh, it's beautiful. We want to hear your thoughts on Guerrilla Games. Are you excited for Horizon Forbidden West? Do you think the whole studio is overhyped and the whole game franchise is overhyped, and screw Sony and screw Guerrilla Games? You are only an indie player and forget about them. But that's a valid point of view, so we want to hear it, and we want to hear what you want us to cover next then, if you don't want us to cover Guerrilla Games. And all those thoughts and more. Termite, can you refresh the good listeners as to where they can share those thoughts if they have them?
Go to 80bitpodsmash.com, 80bitpodsmash.com. Landing website has links to all of our social media outlets: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, and Discord. They're all there, as well as our Twitch channel, what we talked about earlier at the very onset of our show, possibly streaming something live on Twitch. Make sure you go to twitch.tv/80bitpodsmash. Hit the subscribe, but we don't make any money, so there's no pay, there's no subscribe. Like, just go hit the thing so you get the notification.
So you get notified. Yep.
Right, so you get notified when we go live. Pay attention to our Discord server and other social media outlets, because we announce what we're going to be doing before we do it. So you can be a part of our chat, our live chat, as we do fun things. So be a part of all of that in our community. Sometimes we interact with other communities like The Flock, who we are active in their Discord, and we share fun facts with each other, and we interact. So like, we're growing, and we're trying to get more folks into our spaces so we can have everyday conversations around the things that we love with video games. 80bitpodsmash.com, as well as our podcast platforms. They're all there: Spotify, Google Play, Apple Podcasts, just all there. Like, that's where all the magic happens. 80bitpodsmash.com.
Awesome. All right, so with all of our holiday episodes, when our episode, especially if our episode's airing on said holiday, we really, really like to try to make it as thematically relevant as possible. And we do it every single year. We pull it off, I think. I don't know. Some of our episodes may have been less holiday episodes may have been less quality than others. I think this one's a pretty good one, though. So with Valentine's Day, we've certainly covered what, relationships with gamers were like. That was our first year with our wives as guests. Mm-hmm. We've talked about companions, pets, and other kinds of companions, video game companionship for Valentine's Day. Well, for our next Valentine's Day, for this Valentine's Day episode, it's actually airing on the 14th. So we really have to bring it this time. So this time, we're not just talking about companionships or romance systems in video games. We're talking about love stories. So what is a love story, and what are the best video game love stories? And are there any video games that are true love stories in the traditional sense? We will discuss that We'll talk about love. What is love?
Baby, don't hurt me.
We'll talk about it next week for our Valentine's Day episode, so you can look forward to that on the actual week that Horizon Forbidden West will be coming out. You can look forward to that discussion and be thinking about that as you play a game that's probably not going to be a love story at all that week. So we'll talk about that then, and we'll see you for a happy Valentine's Day next week.
See you next week.